the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday, March 23rd. The world does not slow down over the weekend or any time else. It just keeps on going, particularly with Donald Trump in the White House. All right, we're going to talk about the Iran war. There's a lot to talk about, particularly about these negotiations or not negotiations or maybe negotiations or who knows if there's negotiations. But anyway, we'll talk about that. I'll talk about that as well. We will really, I want to start, whoops, I don't know why that is. Okay, I want to start with something a little different. We'll start with what Donald Trump said, I think it was Friday, and then kind of the response to that. Then I'll bring you up to speed in terms of what's going on to literally what's happening right now in terms of the back and forth out there. And I'll also bring you up to speed about what is going on in the fight itself, that is in the war itself, what's going on the ground in Iran, at least the best of my knowledge, ability, not much that I know, that but we'll cover what I know, and we'll see what else. But so here's what happened, right? Trump has been going back and forth, right? At some point he said, homo straight, it's not mine. Let those people who get the oil from the homos from the Gulf, let them deal with it. And I'm going to walk away. And people thought, oh, America's going to walk away from the war. And he is whiplashing people constantly, and he's whiplashing the oil market constantly, right? Whiplashing the oil market. And then he said on Saturday, I think it was Saturday, I think. Trump said, you know what? If the Iranians don't open up the Straits of Hormuz within 48 hours of right now, we will bomb their power facilities, the electrical power facilities that provide electricity. We'll start with the one providing Tehran, which is this massive plant that provides electricity with Tehran. But we'll put the entire country into darkness. We will take out all of their power. And people were flipping out. Oh my God, this is a massive escalation. The Iranians, within a few hours, came out and said, if you do that, we will take out every desalination plant in the Gulf states. We will take out their oil fields, their gas. They literally put out a list with pictures of every facility in Saudi Arabia and UAE and Qatar and Bahrain and Kuwait that they would take out if Trump took out their electric facility. And people were pretty panicking. There was a real, this is a massive escalation. You're going to take the Middle East back. People are not going to have water. It was, from my perspective, I have to say it was pretty entertaining because people still take Trump seriously. But here's the one claim that I found really, really interesting, right? A lot of people, including people who I respect and people who do good reporting on what's going on in wars and stuff like that, came out and said, if Trump bombs the electric facilities of the Iranians, that would be a war crime, right? Because the electric facilities are used by civilians, not primarily by the military. It's not a legitimate military target. So it goes against the rules of war, international law. Now, I think international law and the rules of war are bogus concepts. There's no enforcement mechanism. There cannot be an enforcement mechanism. Only the good guys abide by these. I mean, at the same time as everybody was saying, ooh, taking out the electricity would be rules of war, the Iranians were launching missiles directed at population centers in Israel. Nobody was saying, naughty Iranians. Oh, those naughty, naughty, bad Iranians. They are violating the rules of law, the rules of war. They're violating international convention. This is really bad of them, because nobody expects the Iranians to live up to the rules of war. When they killed 30,000+, maybe, we don't know exact numbers, of demonstrators of their own people, just unarmed civilians, just shot them in the street. Nobody said, ooh, those nasty Iranians, they're violating international law. Who the F cares about international law? It's meaningless. It cannot be and is not prosecuted. There's no mechanism by which to enforce it. And the reality is that it's just plain wrong to tie the hands of the good guys, of the people fighting in self-defense against forces of evil by not allowing them to, I don't know, bomb the things they need to bomb in order to win the war. I mean, you can't drop bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki because international law. And yet, in my view, one of the most moral acts an American president has ever done is approve the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Ended the war. A brutal, bloody, horrible war ended. Saved the lives of, I mean, even one, but hundreds of thousands of American troops probably 1 million Japanese, because the invasion of the island of Japan would have been horrific in terms of casualties. And of course, the United States bombed every city in Japan before that. I mean, people make a big deal out of the atomic bombs, but the reality is they firebombed every single city in Japan. So, this is a war of self-defense. Those who are defending themselves, the Israelis and the Americans, should be able to do whatever they need to do in order to win, and win quickly, and win decisively. And winning means regime change. That's what it means. And if that means taking out their entire energy sector, so be it. If that means taking out their power grid, so be it. If that means bombing where there's going to be civilian casualties, so be it. The only time you don't do stuff, the only thing that's wrong in a war is when it's gratuitous, when it's not necessary for victory. But nobody complained that Hamas broke international law on October 7th or didn't abide by the rules of war. That Hezbollah never abides by the rule of law. Who's enforced that? If world troops landed in taking out Hezbollah because they violate the rules of war, international law, and yet they use that against the good guys all the time. Now, I don't know if it makes sense to bomb the electrical facility. This is indeed the son of the Shah came out and said, please don't do that. Only the Iranian people will suffer from that. It won't make much, I don't know. I'm not, I've advocated for it because I think it's a way to decisively end this. But, I'd have to have a lot more intelligence before I pressed the button. But the point is, it's whatever it is, whether it makes sense or doesn't, is a question of strategy. It's a question of, will it achieve the aim? That is, will it end the war faster? And if Iran really retaliates the way they said they would retaliate, do they have the capacity to do that? And is there a way to stop them from doing that? Because you don't want to take out the entire oil industry in the Middle East. Now, again, it surprises me that this wasn't thought about in advance, planned for, and these facilities not better defended. But, all right, this is where we are right now. The same is true, again, I'll say it again and again and again, the Homo Straits. I mean, the more I read about it, the more I listen to experts, it's obvious and clear that while the military, I'm sure, has lots of plans on how to open the Homo Straits, those plans were not put into place before the war started because Trump didn't think it was a big deal and didn't think it would be a big deal. And as a consequence, they're playing catch-up. And they have to bring in the resources, bring in the Marines, bring in I think the 82nd Airborne might be in the Middle East, on the way to the Middle East, bring in the minesweepers, bring in the ships that will do the escorting, bring all these things. It wasn't planned for in advance. The assets weren't in place to do it. And of course, one of the things you really, really need to open up the Hormuz Straits, which I've said for weeks now, is our allies. Would help a lot. You need a lot of ships. Allies can get their navies there. And it turns out, I didn't know this, but it turns out that our allies have better minesweeping technology than we do. Our minesweepers are old, and they were sent back to base, and they're being retired. The new minesweeping technology that the U.S. has really been untested and is in Singapore right now. It's not in the Gulf. But the Europeans have good minesweepers. The Japanese, the South Koreans have good minesweepers. So there are good minesweepers among our allies. Those should have been discussed maybe before the war broke out, or on the day it broke out, if you didn't want to divulge secrets. The day it broke out, in order to get those assets in place so that they can be used in the Gulf. Wasn't done, and therefore wasn't. So here's the thing. A war crime, you can't have a war crime. That is, a war crime is a crime that a soldier commits under your service. Let's say it's an American soldier. It's a crime that is done under the jurisdiction of the American military. A soldier rapes in an occupied territory. A soldier kills people gratuitously. A soldier disobeys orders of any variety. Those are war crimes. There is no such thing as international law. There's no such thing as international war crimes. I know this is heresy, but I don't think the Geneva Convention is relevant for anything. And again, the bad guys don't care. And the good guys are placed at a disadvantage, because they are at least expected to abide by these things. So anyway, over the weekend, Iran sent 2 missiles towards Dimona. Dimona is where Israel has its nuclear reactor. I mean, look, even if one of those missiles hit the nuclear reactor, nothing would happen. Israel's well prepared for it. It is massively reinforced and protected. It's probably shut down in terms of radioactivity during what's going on right now. I don't know how exactly they do it. Whatever nukes the Israelis have, and they have nukes, quite a few of them, they're buried deep, deep underground. None of these missiles the Iranians have could touch the nuclear arsenal that Israel has. So, I mean, everybody was panicking. Oh, they're firing at Dimona. This is a catastrophe. No, there was nothing to worry about. Plus, they weren't firing it. You know, their missiles can't hit anything accurately, so they hit the town of Dimona. Dimona is a town. People live there. They hit there, and they injured a lot of people, including some young kids. Again, war crime. Anybody, nobody cares, right? And then later, also in the south of Israel, they hit another town called Arad, which is not far from Dimona, Arad, where, again, this one hit, it was a direct hit, an open field, but it was a 500 kilo, I guess, explosion. It shattered windows. It knocked down walls. It really did a lot of damage, and a lot of people were injured. Quite a few people in serious condition. Children again, yes, that's what Iran does. It lobs missiles. They're basically blind missiles. They're proximate direction, and they hurt civilians. But that's the only thing they can hurt. Note that not a single Israeli soldier, not a single Israeli political leader has been killed during this war. Whoever's been killed on the Israeli side are all civilians. Is anybody yelling? What are you doing, Iranians? Stop killing civilians. Stop bombing civilians. No. Because everybody expects the bad guys. That's what they do. Nobody goes after the Russians for lobbing missiles into Kiev and killing and into apartment buildings and destroying people or bombing, the power supply that provides heat and electricity to the Ukrainians. I mean, people complain about it, but what are you going to do? Rules of war, there's nothing you can do. And of course, The Ukrainians are figuring this out, and they're doing the same thing to the Russians. Not so much civilian, but in terms of infrastructure. We'll talk about that in a minute. So that's where we were, right? Trump threatened that he was going to bomb the power supply to the city of Tehran. Now, I have to say, I did not think he would go through with it. Not for a second did I think he would go through with it. I believed strongly he would find a way out of it, and he did this morning, right? So this morning he came out and said that his ultimatum for Iran to reopen the straits by basically later today, right, 2 days, had forced the Iranians to the negotiating table, and there had been good and productive peace talks with Tehran over the weekend, and that he was, very, very positive, and he thought a deal could come together, and he was postponing the deadline for opening the Hormuz Straits by 5 days, and he wouldn't be bombing the power facilities. The U.S. and the Israelis are still bombing all over Iran. The U.S. primarily along the shore of the Hormuz Straits, just like I told you, needed to be done. And the Israelis in Tehran, Isfahan, and a bunch of other places around Iran. Iran then comes out and says, no negotiations here. We don't know what Trump is talking about. We had no negotiations. Nobody's contacted him. Then, this is all this morning, right? Then, Axios and some other media channels, including in Israel, report that no, there have been contacts between between the U.S. and the Speaker of the House of Iran. They name her by name, and they say they're contacts, and indeed, they are going to be meeting. Witkoff and Jared Kushner are going to fly to Islamabad in Pakistan, where they're going to meet with the Speaker of the House, the Iranian Speaker of the House. And now people are thinking, maybe there's a big conflict within the Iranian regime. Maybe the IRGC doesn't want talks, but the Speaker of the House does. Maybe he represents some moderates, although he's not exactly known as a moderate. And maybe there's a conflict. Trump is saying, they've agreed already to most of my demands. No missile program, no this, no that. I mean, he had a whole 6 plans, right? 5 years of no missiles, never more than 1,000 missiles, no nuclear program, all this stuff. Anyway, so they're talking to the Speaker of the House, and they talked all weekend, and now they're all going to Islamabad to hang out and negotiate a deal. But then the Speaker of the House himself puts out an announcement saying, I'm not negotiating with the Americans. I don't know what Trump's talking about. There are no negotiations going on. In the meantime, people are saying that Pakistani officials are serving as brokers between the U.S. and Iran. And they are indeed trying to organize something in Islamabad. But Trump jumped on a hint of maybe there's somebody to talk to in Iran to already declare victory and, I don't have to bomb the electric facility. Now, look, all of this could be a head fake by Trump. The thing about Trump is you just don't know. It could be that his ultimate purpose is just to buy time as the Marines approach, as the 82nd Airborne, as whatever else they have planned. And in the meantime, everybody's focused on maybe a peace deal, maybe a deal. And oil prices, by the way, tumbled today. They went below 90. They went down 10%. So oil prices are down. Gas prices are down. Everything's anticipating peace. And Trump is just kidding. Could be Trump is just kidding. Nobody actually knows. Nobody knows. I don't know. Fog of war and all of that. And I certainly have no input into Trump's mind. But there does seem to be something going on in Pakistan. Pakistan is talking to somebody in Iran. It could be the Speaker of the House. It could be the negotiations were going on the weekend. And that the response to that was the GC called up the Speaker of the House and said, we're going to kill you, stop this, and he changed his mind. It could be a lot of things. I mean, one thing is clear, I think, that within the IRGC, there is massive confusion. I mean, remember, many of them are dead. Many of them are dead. The others are hiding because they're afraid to be dead. They're in a bunker somewhere. The president of Iran is completely irrelevant. He's been taken out of, I mean, maybe Trump's negotiating with the president, but he's been taken out of the chain of command. He's no longer relevant, right? So, I mean, you're watching the news. Is Trump lying? Is he telling the truth? Is that a partial truth? Is not? Is it that he told the truth, but then the Iranians changed their mind? Maybe they're not changing their mind. Maybe they're fighting. I mean, the one thing that I think is clear is there is massive confusion inside the IRGC. I mean, they're massive leaks. Some of the IRGC people are spies, are working for the Mossad in one way or another. So they're suspicious of each other anyway. They're wondering who is talking to the Americans. Is anybody? Is the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, did he speak to Americans? Didn't he speak to Americans? He had to come out with a statement because otherwise they would go after him. The oil market responded to Trump's announcement, but it hasn't bounced back up given the denials of Iran. So the oil market is assessing, yeah, there's probably something here. Trump might be right. Nobody knows. Nobody knows, and it's including probably inside the IRGC. I mean, they are, in spite of everything, look, this war is devastating for Iran. Iran has taken a hit that is just unprecedented in warfare. It's been demolished. Its industry, its military industry, is eviscerated. It's not completely demolished, but 80% of it is gone. The military bases, the command and control centers, have been destroyed. They still have this one mountain where inside the mountain they have ballistic missiles, and they have these rail carts that deliver the missiles to launches, and they can launch. And, that is so deep inside the mountain that even the biggest American bomb, the 35,000-pound one, cannot breach it. So the Israelis and the Americans are trying to block the entrances, and they do, but then the Iranians open them up and they launch missiles. So it's almost impossible to stop them from launching all missiles, given how deep these things are. But every other facility is basically gone. They still have some mobile launches here and there, particularly in further east. Israel and the Americans have been focused primarily on Western Iran. But it's minuscule. If you look at the number of missiles being launched, it's minuscule. And the fact that two of them got through and dropped in Israel, one in Arad and one in Dimona, is sad, very sad, because a lot of people got injured. But, again, 92 to 95% of the missiles get shot down. All we hear about are the ones that get through. So the Iranians are unbelievably ineffective. They have no military force that can stand up to anything the Americans done. They have drones. They can shoot them. They have missiles. They can shoot them blindly. The drones are a little bit more accurate. The Arab countries, the Gulf countries, are gaining now Ukrainian technology to shoot down drones. So they'll be much better prepared in the weeks to come to fight off, Iranian drones. Iran is finished as a military force in the region. It's finished. All it can do is block the Hormuz Straits. Now, that's a big deal. And that it can't do forever. That is, if and when the United States gets its assets together and puts together, they have a strategy, they know what to do, but once they decide to act, they can't be stopped. Iran will not stop the Americans from opening up the Hormuz Straits once the U.S. decides to do it. So they have nothing. All they can do is find a way somehow to survive and kill their own citizens. somehow to survive, so that when their citizens, their own people, rise up against them, then they will be able to shoot them down in the street. Right? So the United States is good at some things, got an amazing Navy, got an amazing Air Force, not good at other things, knocking down drones. They're still working on that. Ukrainians are better at that. And Ukrainians are the best in the world at that. Maybe the Israelis are pretty good with their lasers, but that can be exported easily. The Iranians are finished. They can buy time, but for what? Again, to kill their own people. People are defecting. People are leaving. People are not showing up to work. They're soldiers. Many have been killed, hundreds, maybe thousands. In an authoritarian state, they're never all on the same page anyway. So there's infighting. And it's the regime right now is hunkering down. The extremists are the ones holding it kind of together. But it can't survive. Or I don't think it will survive. Not ultimately. Too much infighting, too much opposition. The economy is finished. I mean, the real is basically, they just issued a 10 million real note. You know how much a 10 million real note is worth? 10 million real note, $7. Real's lost something like 90% of its value. So the economy is completely destroyed. Yes, they're still getting some of their oil out, so they're getting some foreign currency, dollars, coming in. But that can't sustain the entire economy. And of course they know. Here's the thing. Here's the funny part, right? Israel and the United States, in a matter of hours, could completely destroy the entire oil industry, power, electricity facilities, water desalination plants of the Iranian regime. They could basically take Iran back to the Middle Ages, and it wouldn't take more than half a day if they wanted to. Right? So Iran is finished. It's vulnerable to whatever Trump does, and the question is, of course, what will Trump do? Nobody knows that, right? So some Iranian officials might have agreed to several major demands from the United States, including a 5-year freeze on its long-range ballistic missile program. That's according to an official who told that to Channel 12 in Israel. But do those officials represent anybody? Which faction is it? Are they the ones in control, not in control? Are they still alive after they made that? What's exactly going on? Nobody actually knows. Nobody actually knows. So, it's going to be interesting. The next few hours, the next few days, as always, are going to continue to be super interesting as we learn more about what is going on. Again, while all of this is going on, and the United States is and Trump is seesawing back and forth, Marines on their way. Again, I'm seeing reports of the 82nd Airborne Division, which can deploy anywhere in the world in 18 hours, is probably on the way to the Middle East. Maybe they're already there. They could paratroop in. They could be helicoptered in. Lots of ways in which they can get to where they need to be. There are lots of different islands in the Straits of Hormuz that the Americans could take control over to give them access to the entire Gulf, to monitor what's going on, and to protect the Gulf and to protect the ships. So lots of different strategic options in terms of how to open up the straits. It could very well be that that's what they're doing. All right. interesting. There's a oil supertanker hauling 2 million barrels of Iraqi crude just got through the Straits of Hormuz. It's the first vessel observed moving Iraqi oil that got through the strait. So again, not clear why this one got through, why the Iranians let it through, but it did, right? Again, it's not clear. Israel's Channel 12 is reporting that Iran has agreed to freeze its missile program for 5 years. Who has agreed? Not clear. For 5 years, as part of emerging talks. If true, that's huge. But it's unverified. And then what happens after 5 years? What happens after 5 years? Is that a deal the Israelis should accept? Is that a deal the UAE would accept? One of the things that, Trump, keeps backing out of these things is on the one hand, is really exhibiting weakness, but then also unpredictability, which is keeping everybody off balance. So, for example, when Israel took out the gas facility, the natural gas facility in Iran, it took out 40% of the gas facility with the idea that that the Iranians would get the picture that they can take it out whenever they want, and they could destroy the entire gas facility. This is for domestic use, and basically cripple the entire electric power in Iran. And they did it with Trump's knowledge, and it was the idea of, shape up Iran or we'll take the rest out as well. But then Trump, stabbed them in the back, because what Trump did, Iran attacked the Qatari gas facility, and Qataris panicked. They called up Trump, and Trump came out and said, oh, no, I didn't authorize that mission, although it's obvious the Americans were involved. And I have got a commitment now from Netanyahu not to attack any more gas facilities. So he keeps taking stuff off the table and then adding stuff. Oh, but we'll attack the electric facilities. Very difficult to execute a war like this with a partner like Trump. Very difficult for America, and I'm sure for American generals, to execute their strategy with Trump at the helm. But it's within reach. That's the thing that is going to be so frustrating if any kind of real deal happens here. That it's within reach. The whole thing is within reach. The fall of this regime change, the complete restructuring of the Middle East is within reach. Now, Trump is saying there will be some form of regime change, but that's not clear what he means, right? What does he mean by that? Right. Notice that the supreme leader, Khamenei, is still, nobody's heard from him, right? So if the Speaker of the House becomes the leader de facto in Iran, is that a regime change? Not really. The only regime change is that the Islamists are out. This is no longer an Islamic republic. That is the only thing that would count as real regime change. So who knows? Again, we just don't know. Let me just see. All right. Yeah, the UAE is getting better at downing these things. So over the last 24 hours, they've downed 7 ballistic missiles and 16 drones. Total since the start of the war, the UAE is down 352 ballistic missiles and 1,789 drones. I mean, some of them get through, but notice how many are being downed. Iran has nothing. It never did. I've been saying that from day one. Right? Let's see. Okay, it does look like, and again, fog of war, we don't really know, but it does look like the 82nd Airborne Division from Fort Bragg, and as well as other units with the U.S. Army, are being deployed. They're on the move. They are heading towards the Middle East. And, it's... Now, we'll see what the negotiations are up, or whether the negotiations is just a fake out that basically is allowing the Americans to get ready, right, for the next phase, which is basically opening up the Straits of Hormuz. All right, let's see, what else did I want to cover with regard to? I have to mention this because it's just it's not amusing. It is amusing. It's shocking that it's amusing, but it is amusing. But it's shocking that it is. So just a few minutes before Trump announced that he was negotiating with the Iranians and delaying the attack on the power plant, which was bound to affect stock prices and oil prices, just a few minutes, right? Literally, there was a sharp and isolated jump in volume. Both of the S&P 500 and on oil futures, right? So roughly, so at 6:50 a.m., the S&P 500 E-mini futures traded had a sharp increase, as did oil, a shorting, a volume to short oil, because it's heading down. Roughly 15 minutes later, at 7:05 a.m., Trump made the announcement. And oil prices tumbled and stock futures zoomed up. I mean, knowing when Trump zigs and zags is probably the most profitable trade in human history. Never has anybody, and this beats Pelosi and everybody, never has anybody done better on inside information that whoever, I assume the Trump family, is doing with this Trump zigzagging all day long. Literally minutes before he makes the announcement, trade happens, and you can see this on every major announcement he makes. It truly is astounding. In any other context, there would be investigations. The SEC would be looking at this. It's massive insider trading, but it's always insider trading with Trump. And think about how much money you could make knowing exactly what Trump is going to do. Now, I'm not against insider trading, except for politicians, because politicians can sway the news. They use force. It's just unbelievable to me that, a businessman who did something like this would go to jail for a long, long, long time. A politician, everybody just shrugs. Yeah, okay, what can we do? It's criminal. It really is criminal and horrific and disgusting that this is happening. Right. Let's see. Yeah, we're not. Okay. U.S. Central Command said that they have conducted more than 9,000 strikes in Iran since the war started, with zero casualties on the part of the American military making the strikes. Some on the ground, sadly, in Kuwait, but zero of the fighters in the air. and they've sunk 140 Iranian naval vessels. 140. Netanyahu says he spoke to Trump. Trump thinks he can leverage the military achievements against Iran to realize the objectives of the war in an agreement. But yeah, nobody knows if there's anybody on the other side to have an agreement with, as I said earlier. Overnight, so Sunday night, Monday morning, Israel had a wave of strikes in the heart of Tehran. They targeted security headquarters of the IRCG, more of the headquarters, and other targets all over the capital. The capital was booming the whole time. And as I said, airborne troops are probably on the way to Iran. It looks like 330 of Iran's estimated 470 ballistic missile launches have been destroyed. That's 70%. More than half by direct strikes. The biggest challenge Israel and the United States have are those tunnels that we talked about, and that, you know, it's called the Yazd railway inside the Granite Mountain is still operating. The 500 meters depth, nothing can reach that level of depth, other than maybe special forces. They go in there and bomb the thing from the inside. You know, there's just, they've done what they can, I think. They're kidding the manufacturing facilities outside, the parts facility outside. They can't get inside that mountain, and that will survive the war. And one of the things that they're going to have to be able to do in a negotiated settlement is find a way to guarantee that that is destroyed, put out of commission, whatever. That can't continue to exist. Otherwise, the Iranians can say, "Oh, we're stopping the missiles," and then continue building them inside the mountain without anybody paying attention. Note that the amount of missiles being launched are down 90% from the beginning of the war. They're stable. They're still launching every day in many missiles, but not many, few missiles, but in many barrages, which is basically a way to harass people, not to do a lot of damage. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, what else did I want to tell you? There's some discussion in Israel about goals achieved and whether those goals, how many of the goals have been achieved. And there's disagreement, as there usually is, between the Mossad, the equivalent of the CIA, and the Israeli Army intelligence. Just like in the United States, they often disagree. Army intelligence basically is saying, you know, we've achieved almost all the goals that we had. We've taken out the facilities we wanted to take out. We've taken out most of the people we wanted to take out. By the way, over the weekend, Israel took out at least one, maybe several remaining engineers and scientists in the nuclear program. So one of a senior member of the engineering department of a university in Tehran that worked on the missile program was taken out at his home, and a number of others have been killed. So we've killed the people we want to kill. We've taken out what we need to take out. So Israeli Army intelligence pretty happy. Mossad is not. Mossad has bigger goals. They are the ones advocating for regime change and think that that is possible. They want this to continue so they can continue weakening of the regime and the forces it can put into place to attack their own population. The Mossad truly believes that post-conflict, once the fighting is over, the Iranian people will rise up and that they will find allies within moderate leadership within Iran and potentially some of the military leadership. So there is still a strong belief among some Israelis, not all, that you know, the goal of regime change is indeed possible and will indeed be happening. We will find out if that happens in the days, weeks to come. It's going to be interesting. All right. Yeah, hard to tell if any of this is right, but the stories here that say over 3,000 troops from the 82nd Airborne have already arrived in the Middle East, and many more on the way. They're also saying, a bunch of equipment has arrived with them, helicopters, and a bunch of other stuff. So, you know those massive airplanes, what do they call them? The Super Galaxy. The Super Galaxies, a bunch of them have flown from the U.S. to the Middle East overnight, and that they are in play. All right, I think that is the update. Basically, these negotiations, nobody knows what's going on with them. And the fact is that the United States and Israel continue to bomb Iran, continue to take out regime assets, continue to dominate the Iranians, and assets are being put in place. Assets are being put in place, by the Americans to potentially open up the Hormuz Straits. It looks like by taking some of the islands, putting boots on the ground. But it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell at this point. Yeah, I mean now we're getting report after report of lists of equipment and lists of troops that are heading to the Middle East. So again, hard to tell how much of this is reality and how much is just rumors and fog of war and all of that good stuff. Yeah, I mean I'll tell you this. The UAE and potentially Saudi Arabia do not want a deal. The UAE and Saudi Arabia wants the Iranians devastated, destroyed. They want regime change. I don't think they want necessarily a secular regime change, but they want these people out. They want the Iranian military completely destroyed. They do not want to live with the consequences of just a weakened Iran. Now, it's very weakened. It's not, even if it ended today, it would be very weakened. But they want this ended and ended properly, right? So, we will see. Right, CENTCOM commander just put out a message to the Iranian people, or did that a few hours ago. So again, there's a campaign with the Iranian people to try to get them, ultimately, when all this is done, to take them out. All right. Here's the Iranians, just so you see how nice the leadership is. This is one of the Ayatollahs saying yesterday, over the weekend actually. He said, "No," this is to the Iranian people. "No, that if one day you try to overthrow us, we will scorch this land in such a way that you will not be able to rebuild Iran even in 100 years." That's their leaders. That's what they're being told. All right, Saudis are going after the Iranians. The UAE is going after the Iranians. And if you win this, if you take out this regime, it's a new Middle East. It's a completely new Middle East, and it's a completely new Muslim world. It shakes up and completely transforms the entire world. All right. U.S. officials think that there's just like a dozen mines in the Gulf. As long as they don't lay more mines, they think that there's just a dozen. Again, the U.S. doesn't have the most sophisticated minesweepers. They're going to need the help of some of the allies. But 21 countries signed up last Friday to help the United States, including the UAE and Bahrain and Japan and many European countries. So those kind of assets should be in play and should be moving into the area from these countries in the days to come. All right. It's like the stuff from Pakistan just keeps on rolling in. Pakistan has proposed that U.S.-Iran talks take place in the capital of Islamabad as early as this week. Pakistan's principal decision maker spoke with U.S. President Trump on the matter yesterday, with Pakistani Prime Minister held talks with the Iranian president earlier today. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. They're talking to the president. The president's irrelevant. The president has been basically shut down by the IRGC. So, yeah, I mean, it's all talk. It's all talk at this point. All right, a few other things. Given oil prices, where they are, the U.S., the United States, is experiencing a massive oil export boom. The United States is exporting like crazy. It's the largest exporter now in the world, has been for a while. It's exporting, it hit 3.9 billion barrels, I guess, a day. It's, 3.9 billion is in 2025. But they are, I'm sure oil is just flowing out right now. Now, again, the United States also imports a lot of oil, right? We, for example, export one type of oil to Mexico and import from Mexico a different type of oil. Why? Because our refineries, many of the refineries in the United States, are good at refining heavy oil. Mexico, Venezuela, Canada. Refineries in Mexico might be really good at refining light oil, Texas oil. So we ship it over there and ship back refined products. And we ship in their oil and refine it in the United States. So there's constant back and forth of oil. Oil markets are global, and there's not one type of oil. There are many types of oil. So important to note, you'll see a lot of stuff about oil. The United States exports oil. It's the number one country that imports oil from the United States is the Netherlands. And not because the Netherlands uses all that oil. It imports more than 11% of American oil. It's because it then refines it and then sells it to other European countries. Mexico imports another 10% of American oil. Again, Mexico has its own oil. But Mexican oil, at least some of it, is a different type of oil than the oil they bring in from the United States. So it's a complicated picture when we talk about oil. The oil in the Gulf is light oil. It's not the kind of heavy oil that comes out of Mexico and comes out of Canada. It's much more similar, I think, to Texas oil. So it's a direct competition. All right. Also relevant to oil, last night, I think it was last night, the Ukrainians carried out a drone strike 1,000 kilometers away from Ukraine, way inside Russia. About 50 Ukrainian drones hit the port of Primorsk. It's in the Leningrad region. Leningrad. Whoever talks about Leningrad? Isn't Leningrad St. Petersburg? I think Leningrad is St. Petersburg. It is the biggest. It's a major port. I guess the region is still called Leningrad. Okay, the region is called Leningrad, even though the city is not called Leningrad anymore. So this is Primorsk is about 1,000 kilometers, 920 kilometers from Ukraine. So that's an amazing reach that these drones have. These drones were not shut down, and this port handles about 60% of Russia's seaborne oil exports. And they lit it up. They destroyed big chunks of the port. They blew up a bunch of oil reserves, tanks. They're attacking the oil export business that the Russians have. Now, this is going to piss off Trump royally, because this, everything else held constant, this in and of itself is going to raise the price of oil in the world. The Trump administration has eliminated the limits on the ability to buy Russian oil in order to lower the price of oil, and now the Ukrainians are going ahead and destroying it. So Trump is not going to like this, but Putin must be panicking. I mean, the Ukrainians now have better drones, better drone capabilities. They can reach deep into Russia than Russia has. Now, it's true, Russia has more missiles, ballistic missiles, other missiles, cruise missiles than the Ukrainians are, but the Ukrainians are also very good at shooting them down. The Ukrainians are particularly good at shooting down drones. The Russians are not as good. So the Ukrainians now have military capability that the Russians just can't handle. Right? And they're showing that the drone industry is now, best of class. It's ignoring the United States. It's going after Russia's oil infrastructure, even though Trump wants them not to. And yeah, I mean, it is pretty amazing that they have been able to do this. In addition, they now have the capability again of reaching 1,000 kilometers into Russia. And as a consequence, they are taking out real strategic assets of the Russians. On top of that, on the battlefield, Ukraine is suddenly on the offensive. Because the Russians lost connection to Starlink, since they lost it about a month and a half ago, they are being in complete disarray. The Ukrainian forces have made real progress on the ground. They have made some of their biggest territorial gains in more than 2 years, particularly in the south of the country. And the Russians are losing huge numbers of troops. They're trying to mount an offensive in the north, in Donetsk, and yet they're getting crushed. And they're losing thousands of soldiers. I mean, the war in Ukraine is not going well for Putin. Not going well for Putin at all. Now, the amount of territory the Ukrainians are gaining is still small. It's still not significant and large, but they're advancing. Their weapons are getting better. I just saw that they're using these robotic kind of machine guns, robots that go out without, like autonomous little tanks that can go out. They're using technology. They've got a military industry that is top notch now. The equipment is far better than anything the Russians have. And again, the Russians are handicapped by the fact that they do not have Starlink. Russia was very dependent on Starlink to run its drone program. And without Starlink, there's been a massive, dramatic drop in the number of drones coming after them on the battlefield. They're still hitting infrastructure deep inside. But on the battlefield, those are guided by satellites, I guess, Russian satellites. But they can't do it in terms of battlefield drones. So it's going to be interesting. Russia's also talking about shutting down Telegram. But Telegram is the app that the Russians are using to communicate on the battlefield. If the Russian government shuts it down, it'll be difficult, even more difficult to communicate than it was before. Ukraine is slowly, now, we're heading into the spring. The spring is a time of offensive. The Russians are certainly going to try to capture bigger parts of Donetsk during the spring when the weather gets better. The Ukrainians, though, because they are harassing the Russians in the south and taking territory from the Russians in the south, are going to force the Russians to have to distract some of the forces that they would have wanted to use on the offensive to put on the defensive. If Telegram is cut off, the Russians are in big problems. But this is the thing: Putin is isolated. It's a Russian disaster right now. It has been from the beginning of the war, but it's just getting worse, and it's dragging out with no success. One wonders what the people around Putin are thinking, what Putin is thinking, and how desperate Putin is getting. There are rumors now coming out of Russia and coming out of the Baltic states, that the Russians are preparing an offensive on the Baltics, which would be suicide. It's not clear if that's to divert attention or to confuse or to scare, or whether they're serious and they think the Europeans won't muster defense and won't come and join the Baltics, in particular Estonia. They're starting to talk about all those Russians in Estonia, just like they talked about the Russians in Ukraine, and they're going to go in and liberate the Russians in Estonia. So a lot of chatter about the Russians attacking the Baltic states. Again, we will see. We will see what actually manifests. I'm not going to say it can't happen. Putin is crazy and suicidal, so it's possible. But I think if he does that, and the Europeans are serious, and I think they have to be serious, then that is the end of the Russian military, with the exception of nukes. All they will have at that point is the option to use nukes. They won't have anything else. And you get World War III if the Russians, if Putin decides he really is suicidal. And then the question is, are there people around him who don't want to die, who stop him? All right, let's go to some domestic stories. TSA is struggling. TSA agents are not getting paid. I feel really bad for them. TSA agents are not getting paid. I mean, I would like to see TSA shut down. It would make airports a lot more pleasant, but it's not going to be. So you're getting amazing, just unbelievable lines. Agents are not coming to work because they're not getting paid. The ones that are coming to work, I think, are just working slower because they're not getting paid. And they're not getting paid because a bill to authorize their budget has not been approved. Democrats are holding it up because they're insisting on reforms to ICE. ICE is part of this, right? ICE is part of the Homeland Security bill. Republicans are not willing to budge. They're not willing to limit ICE. Democrats want reasonable things like body cams, no masks, things like that. The Trump administration is not willing to budge on these things, right? And somebody says, do you think U.S. would stop Russia if they took Estonia? Maybe not, but Europe doesn't need the United States to take out Russia. Russia is history if the Europeans get involved. Europeans have F-35s, which the Russians can't deal with. They have French airplanes they can't deal with. They have, they have Finland and Sweden. They have tanks the Russians don't know what to do with. Europe militarily, even as weak as it is much stronger than anything Russia has left. I mean, most of the advanced weapons that Russia threw at Ukraine have been destroyed. They have no more T-82s. The T-72s are garbage. They always have been garbage, but they're an old tank anyway. There's just nothing there. The Russian army is pathetic. Other than nukes, it is completely and utterly useless. And the Europeans, as weak as they are, far outstrip the Russians in terms of weapon systems, sophistication, technology, pretty much everything. Russia has nothing, really nothing. Other than they're willing to throw people into meat grinders, they're willing to get their own people killed. That's been the method of war the Russians have engaged in forever. And the Europeans can oblige them by killing them all, right? So the idea is, would Europe respond if Russia invaded Estonia? And I think the answer is yes. I think the French, the Germans, the Brits, certainly the Scandinavians. I mean, imagine if Finland doesn't. Can't imagine Finland not responding. And Russians are just no match for the Germans, French, Finns, Swedes combined. I mean, UK, they're not even close. They all fly European tech and American tech that is far, far superior. Far, far superior. Oh, and then there's Poland, which has the largest military force right now in Europe. I mean, Poland by itself would defeat Russia easily. I mean, Ukraine has got Russia stalemated. Imagine what Poland would do to the Russian army. It would crush it. The only thing Russia has are nukes. All right, back to HSS. So TSA is basically massive lines. People upset. People are blaming the Trump administration. Trump doesn't like that. So over the weekend, they have announced, the administration has announced, that they are sending ICE agents, ICE officers. You remember those masked thugs? They're sending the masked thugs to airports to help the TSA. And by the way, if they're at the airport already, they might as well round up whatever illegal immigrants are trying to fly. I mean, can you imagine the havoc this is going to create within? I mean, I wonder if they're going to ask some of the Hispanic TSA agents what their legal status is in the United States. A lot of the TSA agents, might be immigrants. Who knows? But, what's their status? Imagine if they start pulling people out of the lines at the airports. If you think TSA lines are a mess right now, imagine what would happen if people start yelling at the ICE agents and resisting, and the ICE agents are pulling people out of the line, and there's confrontation, or people are filming. I mean, the airport becomes a complete and utter, unequivocal zoo. This isn't going to be hopeful for the TSA. It's going to be a massive disaster for the TSA. And what are they going to do? ICE is not trained at looking at those X-ray machines, right? Either for people or for their luggage. You need training for that. I mean, so they can't do that. So where exactly can they help? They're going to check your driver's license. And since they have your driver's license, let me also check your citizenship status. So people are not going to fly because they're not going to be harassed by. I mean, it's just, you can imagine all the different ways this could go wrong. All the different ways this could go wrong. It is true. Lanes will get smaller because anybody who doesn't want to get harassed by ICE will not go to the airport. But demonstrators might go to the airport just for fun. So it's going to be, I mean, just who came up with this plan? And what is the purpose? What is the purpose? I mean, supposedly this is to alleviate, ICE officers will begin assisting TSA. A shutdown frustrates travelers and screeners. And this is going to make things better? Oh, my God. I mean, TSA, Secret Service, and Coast Guards are working without pay. I think ICE is getting paid, but all these other people are not being paid. Now, supposedly, as a consequence of all this mess, the Republicans are starting to compromise and be willing to compromise with the Democrats and come up with a plan for approving a budget and allowing for some of these modifications for the way ICE functions, which is all for better. But God, what a piece of work. Supposedly Tom Homan, who's not only the immigration czar, but he's also now leading the new airport security effort. I just don't understand it. He's also meeting with the bipartisan group of senators to try to come up with a deal. He says there's good conversation, but they hope to get a deal soon. He is going to become increased role in the immigration and customs enforcement at airports, and as well as TSA. And anyway, he says it's a work in progress. The larger airports where there's a long wait, like 3 hours, somehow ICE is going to make the wait shorter. All right, I'm glad I'm not flying for the next 2 weeks. Supposedly Atlanta was particularly bad. So I am flying through Atlanta in 3 weeks. So hopefully by then. I do have TSA pre and I have clear. And so hopefully with TSA pre and clear, things are a little faster. But yeah, yeah. I mean, a wing and a prayer, right? I mean, I don't know what they're thinking. So yeah, Democrats and Republicans negotiating. Hopefully there'll be a deal soon. All right. All right. On yesterday, I guess. Was it yesterday? No, 2 days ago, on Saturday. Robert Mueller died at age 81. Of course, Donald Trump immediately tweeted out, good, I'm glad that he is dead. It is really unbelievable what a lowlife a president really is. Just a despicable, horrible human being. Now, we're talking about Robert Mueller, who, let me just, we're talking about a former FBI director who was, went to Princeton. He led a platoon in Vietnam, right? He was commissioned in the Marine Corps, led a platoon in Vietnam. No, wait a second. What am I? I'm sorry. There was a little bit of confusion here on my thing. What am I looking at? Okay, sorry. Mueller enlisted. He didn't enlist in the Marine Corps. He went to Vietnam. He trained as an Army Ranger. Trained as Army Drop School as a parachuter. Right. He led combat platoons throughout 1968 in Vietnam. He was wounded. He received numerous decorations. A number of and we're talking about a war hero from the Vietnam War. He left the military, went to law school, spent a decade, 12 years as director of the FBI. He was appointed to the FBI like a week before 9/11, right? So he was in charge of the FBI right in the aftermath of 9/11, the complete restructuring of the FBI to take into account terrorist attacks and the threat that 9/11 represented. He overhauled the entire bureau, there weren't that many terrorist attacks post 9/11, and some of that is due to the work that he did at the FBI. Now, why does Trump hate him so much? Because during Trump's first term, the Justice Department, a Republican Justice Department, a Trump-appointed Justice Department, an Attorney General appointed by Trump, actually appointed Mueller to investigate the Trump campaign's coordination or communication potential with Russia. His investigation concluded that Russia interfered in the election on Trump's behalf, and that the Trump campaign welcomed the help, but they ultimately found insufficient evidence of a criminal conspiracy and did not make a prosecutorial decision about whether Trump had obstructed justice. He said, following tradition, we're not going to prosecute, we're not going to accuse a sitting president, and he kind of left it ambiguous about whether Trump had obstructed justice. I think it's pretty clear that he did. Trump was maligned throughout the 2-year investigation by Trump himself, regularly derided it as a witch hunt. But, Mueller, who was a Republican, basically, he was not a Democrat. Robert Mueller was a Republican. And because of that, because he was a special counsel investigating Russian meddling in the first election, this is what Trump tweeted. Robert Mueller just died. Good. I'm glad he's dead. He no longer hurt innocent people. An American war hero, a veteran. Remember, Trump never served, evaded the draft. Mueller was a distinguished, I guess, head of the FBI at a really crucial time, and by all accounts, a pretty decent guy, pretty good guy, and this is how you treat him? The FBI Agents Association announcing the death cited Mueller's commitment to public service and the FBI's mission. The head of the FBI, Kash Patel, didn't say anything because he's a loyalist of Donald Trump's. Mueller was the second longest serving FBI director in FBI history after J. Edgar Hoover. He was there from 2001 until 2013. It's 81. But the kind of response that Trump did, it's just despicable. I mean, it's the president of the United States. It's not just some real estate asshole. He's the president of the United States. You'd think he'd a little bit of dignity or just shut up, not say anything. Yeah, I mean, think about the fact that people did when Charlie Koch was assassinated, there were some people on the left who celebrated that, or at least said good. And the right freaked out about that. Now it's the president of the United States saying, good, somebody died. That's good. Really horrible. All right, quickly. France had municipal elections yesterday. Basically the municipal elections, a lot of different parties won different positions. But the bottom line is that the far right, Marie Le Pen's national rally, did very well. They did very well outside of the big cities. The one big city they did win is Nice in the south of France. But they pretty much lost most of the cities. But they won like an additional 55 municipalities above and beyond what they already had. Clearly, they are building a political base to try to win the presidential election next year. The national rally is solidifying, let's say, its position in French politics. And it's not clear who can oppose them. Now, the way they lose, and they did lose, they lost Paris, but nobody thought they could win Paris. The Paris always goes left. They lost Marseille, but they got 40% of the vote in Marseille, which is huge. But the way they lose is that everybody else gangs up against them. And of course, that's what potentially could happen in the national election for president. They could get the most votes in the first round, and then in a runoff of the two candidates standing, all the opposition parties, left, right, center, and far left, could all rally around the non-national rally candidates. That's how Marie Le Pen lost last time. Marie Le Pen will not be running this time. It'll be Jordan Bardella, who is her number two, is a young guy. He will be running. She has been barred from running because of some campaign finance thing, and the courts barred her from running in France. But it is. They did very well. Rural, smaller, mid-sized cities all over France. In Paris itself, the socialist candidate, who is kind of center-left, socialist is considered center-left in France, beats out the conservative former culture minister, but this is a conservative, not the national rally candidate. This is kind of the center-right political party, which is the conservative party. There's a real split in Paris. If you look, the west part of Paris goes one way. The east part of Paris goes completely the other way. Supposedly there's a long history of this. It's the conservative gets the votes from the wealthy parts of Paris, and the socialist gets it from the working class parts of Paris. Anyway, French elections. You also got elections in Germany, where there was a significant. I think I got all of that. Yes, where there was a significant vote in a part of Germany on the west that usually went to the center left. This time it was won by the center right. The center left was eviscerated. And the AfD, kind of the far right German political party, did very, very well, the best it's ever done. And this is in a western part of Germany, which is not part of the AfD's territory. AfD usually does well in the eastern parts of, so again, far right political parties in Europe, at least in France and Germany, probably in Spain, significantly on the rise. All right. Okay. Let's see if there was anything I missed. I got that. Yeah, let's talk quickly about Chavez. We talked about this the other day, about the allegations about Chavez, Cesar Chavez, about all the sexual harassment, indeed rape, that he has been accused of. Cesar Chavez was a hero within the Latino community. He was a hero within the union, within unions, particularly farm worker unions. He's the one who established the first farm worker union in California. There are, as I told you, there are hundreds, maybe thousands of places named after him, anything from schools to streets to parks. Anyway, there is a frantic effort in California and really all over the country to rename and to rename it, to pull down his statues. You have to give credit to the left here. The people who tore down statues of slave owners who didn't contribute anything positive to the United States other than fighting a civil war, those same people are now frantic about discovering that one of their heroes is the equivalent of slave owner, that is a rapist and a sexual harasser. And as a consequence, they're not trying to defend him. They're not trying to rationalize his behavior, as so many people do with some sexual harassers. Instead, they are writing him off, and they are frantically going around and pulling down statues, renaming schools. It's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. There are a lot of Cesar Chavez streets in California. Those are going to change names. It'll be interesting what they change them to. There's a Cesar Chavez Day, holiday, in the state of California. The legislature is going to have to change the name, and they will. Once they discover how immoral these people, this person in particular was, they're taking action. So the name is disappearing. It's gone. It's going away. Somebody doesn't know who Jerry Falwell was. Wow, I must be getting old. Jerry Falwell was a hugely influential religious right character in the 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Very, very, very influential. All right, finally, I think we discussed this on a question I got on a Super Chat, maybe, I don't know. But Afroman, we got to talk about Afroman. So Afroman is some kind of rapper, although I listened to the music that he got sued about, and it's not really rap. It's kind of melodic. Anyway, Afroman was sued by Ohio sheriff deputies after he wrote songs about them raiding his house under the suspicion that he was trafficking drugs and kidnapping. They found no drugs and they found no kidnapped victims, and he made fun of them. He made fun of them in a series of videos that he put up on YouTube. You can find them. Check out Afroman. They're kind of funny. And he's making fun and ridiculing the Ohio Sheriff's Department. Well, the Ohio Sheriff's Department was insulted by these videos and sued him for defamation for $3.9 million. And a jury came down last week and found, rightly, for Afroman across the board. That is, they threw out the lawsuit completely. And this is great because this is somebody who is being treated unjustly. I mean, the cops literally broke down his door, searched the whole place, and even one of the cops, and he makes fun of this in the video, one of the cops is clearly eyeing the lemon pound cake in the kitchen. He's giving it a look like, I want one of those slices. I want some of the lemon pound cake. And the cop is pretty big, so he eats a lot of lemon pound cake, I guess. Anyway, this is a free speech issue. It's great to see somebody standing up to the powers to be, to the people who think they're immune, to people who think they can knock down your door and accuse you of all kinds of stuff. I don't know what the evidence against him was, but clearly they had no case. And then when they're criticized for it, they get upset and they sue you. No, you don't get to silence criticism, particularly at a time where the First Amendment is under threat by our president, by the President of the United States, by the FCC. It is great to see juries stand up for the First Amendment, stand up for the right to criticize, the right to tell the cops, the right to tell the government, the right to tell people with guns to go to hell, particularly if you do it in a funny way. The songs, by the way, have security camera footage from the home. So they show them knocking down the door, coming in the gate, and there's a long segment of the video of the cop eyeing the lemon pound cake. He's now being dubbed Officer Lemon Pound Cake. The poor cop was insulted, and he complained that people sent him hundreds of pounds of cake, hundreds of pound cakes, not hundreds of pounds, hundreds of pound cakes at work, and that he was being harassed, and this is all because of the song. Therefore, the song should be, in a sense, banned, or the author of the song should pay them $3-point-something million. You can buy a lot of pound cake with that kind of money. So this is good. I mean, remember, there's so many. If you look at the history of American song, there are, so many of the great songs in American history are protest songs. They're songs against the authorities, whether it's against the Vietnam War or against racism or against whatever the author thought was an injustice, whether you agree with it or not. These songs, this is part of American history. Not that I'm saying that Afroman's quality of the song, rises to the quality of Nina Simone's Mississippi Goddamn. If you haven't heard Mississippi Goddamn, you should. It's a great song. Or any of the protest songs from the 1960s, of course, We Still Nash and Young, Bob Dylan, Leonard Skinner, whatever. It doesn't rise to that level. But yeah, it's good to know that songs are still protected. And do you remember the attempt of Al Gore to rate songs, to have ratings? I think we do. I think songs now, albums have rating, on them. Never used to have ratings. There was an attempt to really silence songs that Tipper Gore, Al Gore's wife, the stuffy, Christian Tipper Gore, was offended by certain songs, and therefore they need to be labeled as offensive songs. It's good to see. It's again good to see that this is that he was not silenced. All right, there's a good article by Greg Lukianoff, who's part of FIRE, which defends issues of free speech. But check out Fire. Check out Greg Lukianoff. It's called Afroman and the Sweet Sound of a Free Country. Free people are not required to speak to authority in the tone of a worried assistant dean. They're allowed to tell power to go to hell. Absolutely. So I'm with Greg Lukianoff on this and with Fire on this. Like most issues in free speech, they're pretty good. Not perfect, but pretty good. So this is really good. He's got a piece in the Washington Post today, but you can also find it on his blog, The Eternal Radical Idea. The Eternally Radical Idea, that's free speech, with Greg Lukianoff. It's an entertaining essay. He goes into the whole history of music. He gives you examples of songs. Defends free speech in this case. So good for Lukianoff, Greg Lukianoff. So excellent. Thank you, guys. That is the news. Wow, we went over an hour and a half. That is the news for this Monday, March 23rd. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here and for listening. We will now turn to our super chat. There seem to be a lot of questions, quite a few questions. Still more. And let's see how we're doing goals. Okay, so we're definitely in the second hour, so we should be at 500. So we're $128 short of the 500 goal. So please consider supporting us here with stickers, questions. Questions are great because that way you get to shape the show. I get to answer your questions and talk about the things you want me to talk about. So jump in with a question. $20 questions, $50 questions are great. Ooh, we don't have any $50 questions today. Usually we have at least one $50 question. So a $50 question right now would help us get to that goal really, really fast. We do have a bunch of stickers. Roland, thank you for the sticker. Really appreciate it. I saw there was one, I think there was one $50 sticker here. Yeah, here it is. A friend of Aristotle, $50. Thank you, friend of Aristotle. I'm friends with friends of Aristotle. I'm good. It's good to be on that side. Mike, thank you for the sticker. Stephen Hopper, thank you. Let's see. All right. So yeah, I mean, we've got 185 people watching right now. Easily get us to with a few stickers. We could easily get to the target. Please consider, if you haven't supported the show before, please consider, or you have, but you haven't in a while. Please consider doing a sticker or a super chat. And of course, you can, if you want to become a monthly supporter, and now think about this because you're supporting the show already, you could go to Patreon, patreon.com, and become a monthly supporter. Just put in Yaron Brook Show on Patreon, become a monthly supporter. That's the best way. It's predictable. It's slowly, steadily growing, which is good. Thank you, guys. If you've stopped giving on Subscribestar or any of these others, jump over to Patreon and support there. It's a more stable, longer-term platform and easier to communicate, easier to change, easier to adjust. So check it out. Sponsors, check out defendersofcapitalism.com. Defenders with S of Capitalism, defendersofcapitalism.com. Check it out. You will find some amazing content there relating, obviously, to capitalism and defending capitalism, not only morally, economically, politically, but philosophically, right? Every aspect. And it's Michael Williams, a good friend, and I have assisted in the presentation of the material. So check out the website. It's a pretty cool website, defendersofcapitalism.com. Hendershot Wealth, Hendershot with 2 T's, hendershotwealth.com/YBS. They have a product that can help you with capital gains taxes, reduce your capital gains tax. This is for people who have very, very large capital gains tax liabilities. Check out the interview I did with Robert Hendershot on my playlists under sponsors. Robert is always incredibly insightful, really, really smart. check them out. And yeah, if you find it interesting and relevant to you, then go to the website. Go to the website. All right. Ayn Rand Institute is hosting a conference in Porto, Portugal. Portugal. Porto is beautiful. Portugal is an amazing place. Good food, good people, friendly, really, really pretty. Weather's good. I think it'll be good in mid-April. So join us there in April. You can find information about it at aynrand.org/start here. aynrand.org/start here. And I'll note that you can get a discount for being a Yaron Brook Show listener by putting in a discount code. What is it? The discount code. It's 26YBS10. 26YBS10. All right? Let's see. Finally, Alex Epstein is your number one resource for anything related to energy. Right now, energy is hot. Oil, gas, electricity prices, all, natural gas, LNG. You want to know more about these topics? You want to know more about what's going on in the global economy right now related to these topics? Check out alexepstein.substack.com. He is the best. All right. Let's see. Reminding you about Patreon. Okay. Let's jump in with our super chats. Shazbot. Quote, this is from Jaime Lannister in the Game of Thrones. I can't believe Shazbot is actually quoting Jaime Lannister on the Yaron Brook Show. How far have we descended? Anyway, Jaime is a very, very mixed character. He likes to throw children out of towers, sleep with his sister, and generally, sometimes he actually does decent things, but generally kind of, ugh. All right, anyway, mixed guy. Anyway, here it is. Quote, only a fool makes a threat he isn't prepared to carry out. Yeah, that's pretty basic logic. Pretty basic truths. I don't think Trump was ready to carry out the threat. I think if there wasn't some negotiation, he would have made it up. He probably made it up and then negotiated something. There's no way that he was going to bomb the power facilities bringing electricity into Tehran. No way. Even Trump. I wish that wasn't so, but JJ Jigbees has come in with $50. All right. We are now only $72 short of that $500 goal, although we're probably going to the third hour. So we're $328 short of the third hour goal, which is $750. So we'll see. We'll see if we step up and reach that. JJ Jigby says, it's my birthday this Saturday. Happy birthday in advance for your birthday on Saturday. I got a generous check from my family. That's nice. So it's only fair to pass on the love. Oh, $50. You must have got a really generous check from your family. Thank you for all the years of providing rational, reliable news and commentary. It's made my media diet so much better. Thank you, JJ Jigbiz. Really appreciate your support over years now here on the Yaron Brook Show, on the Super Chat. Thanks. The nice thing about a name like JJ Jigbiz or a handle like JJ Jigbiz, hard to forget. Hard to forget. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right. It doesn't matter. That's how I pronounce it. And it's hard to forget, so I remember him. He's been here for a long time and a good supporter. I appreciate that. Thank you. Michael, two-part question. I was trying to persuade someone that there is absolute truth when it comes to knowledge of reality and pursuing values. And their response was, can't you just keep asking why to everything and see there are no real absolute answers? Any statement you make, you claim is absolute. You can just keep asking why. Yeah, I mean, that's true. But there are certain things that the why question is not relevant towards. The evidence of the senses, things are just, look, gravity. Why? Why is gravity gravity? There is no answer to that. The answer to that why question is because it is. Because that's what it is. The why question is meaningless, right? Towards that which is in reality. The facts of reality are just facts. They just are. So, God created it. Even that, you could ask, why? Why did God create it? I don't know. Go ask him. Well, I mean, nature is what it is. Reality is what it is. A is A. Existence exists. There's no question of why does existence exist? And that's what he's basically, he wants to ask the question, why does existence exist? And there's no answer to that. It's not appropriate or applicable or relevant. The question why can only arise once you accept that existence exists. Once you set that as your benchmark. Once you set reality as your standard. Now you can say, why does the phone fall down every time I let go of it? Oh, because of gravity. And that's the end. There's no why after that. Now, you could ask, how does gravity work? And you could get into physics of gravity, which I don't know if we know much about. But gravity it's the starting point. In other words, existence is the starting point. Why gravity is meaningless? I didn't say it was meaningless. I said it has no why to it. It just is. That's not meaningless. That's just stating a fact. Now, if you're a physicist, it's interesting to find out how gravity works, but not why it works. There's no why. It works because it works. It's just that's the way reality is. So figure out how. Figure out, but, what causes it. That's great. But once you get to reality, this is a pen. Why? There's no why. It's a pen. It just is a pen. That's how we've defined that particular object in the world. Every one of our concepts represents something in the world. But the chain of whys ends with existence, with reality. Thomas, I've said you were right so many times, but I said before the war that I did not trust Trump to run a war. I cannot believe this will come out right because Trump is in charge of this. Yeah, I get that. And I don't disagree. But I think sometimes even Trump can accidentally, and primarily because he teamed up with Israel, something good could come of it. So the fact that he is such an imbecile, an immoral imbecile, does not mean that reality doesn't align because of the fact that the Iranians are even more imbecilic and even more weak than he is. So something good already has come of it, and good things could come of it. Now, it could be that he ends it without the ultimate achievement. It could be that, it doesn't go all the way. But even if we just stop today, right? Even today, we are in a much better situation than we were before the war started. So even bad guys can do things that are, have a positive impact in the world out there. Kind of by accident. Enjoyed your members-only discussion yesterday. That's great. Yeah, there's a new members-only show up for members. If you become a member, you can check it out. Related more to the missing link episode, but can now understand grandson's PhD achievement in a better light. he was left-leaning, and now he's extremely confident in his view of the world. Sad. Yeah, it is sad. It is sad, particularly when it's somebody you care for, or somebody related to you that you know well, and you see that. Very sad. Paul, I don't think that it will take years to reconstitute Iran's military strength if there is no regime change. China and Russia will help them rebuild quickly. Yeah, I don't think that's true. Russia's in no position to help them. Russia's struggling itself. China is got its own problems, right? It's just seen how well American weapon systems work and how poorly its weapon systems work. I don't think China's in a particular mood to deploy its weapon systems. But look, you've got to motivate soldiers. You've got to motivate scientists who've just been killed and are still being killed in Iran right now to re-engage with the program. You've got to build facilities and build factories, and it'll take years. What they've done now will take years. Now, years is not long enough, right? What needs to happen is that it stops completely. Stops completely. Michael says, if you can direct ICE agents to do TSA job, what else can you direct ICE agents to do? FBI work? Personal security for the president? Smells very SS to me. No, it's more incompetence than anything else. I mean, yeah, there's elements of it that could be scary, but it's mostly just incompetence and things getting out of hand for them at the TSA and they not knowing what to do with it. But yes, I mean, ICE is very much, could be viewed as Trump's personal internal police force, and that is very, very dangerous. But I think it gets so much opposition, so much pushback, it's hard to believe that it's going to go the way of the SS. Nature Observer. I mean, when the SS was roaming the streets, didn't get anywhere near the kind of pushback ICE is getting. Nature Observer says, even though the U.S. has no strategy for homo straights, it has a strategy now. My point is not that it doesn't have a strategy. My point is that they didn't have a strategy day one that they were ready to implement. That is, and they didn't have the assets in place. I have no doubt that the Pentagon has a bunch of folders with different strategies on how to deal with the homo straights, and they're probably trying to implement one of them right now. But he says, is it still amazing that they can respond with a couple of weeks to make corrections? There's no other military that can carry this off. Yes, I mean, well, Israel. But on scale, there's no other military that can do it. The U.S. military is pretty damn badass. There's no question about that, with all the problems and everything. They have the best equipment in the world. They have really smart people running it, although flawed, but pretty smart. And yeah, it's just sad that we have to go through all this strife, because if they had put the strategy into place on day one, we wouldn't be where we are today. The homo straights would just be open, and or we would know exactly what was going to happen to open it, and therefore there wouldn't be an energy crisis. So it just what's lacking is lacking from the top. It's the commander in chief. It's the people at the head of the Pentagon who did not insist on having this strategy in place in the early days. But yeah, the fact that the U.S. can pivot like this and has the resources, the assets, and the people is pretty amazing. And no other army in the world can deploy the kind of force like the United States can, or as quickly or as effectively as the United States can. And the Chinese are watching. So they're going to hesitate. They're going to be very hesitant to put themselves in a position where they're confronting a U.S. force. Catherine, do you think energy rationing or energy lockdowns in Europe or the U.S. are likely during the Iran war? Do you think other countries can substitute the oil and gas which cannot be produced and shipped? Yeah, I don't think there'll be any lockdowns or rationing at all. I mean, you might have lines in some countries to get petrol, to get gasoline. But no, I think that prices will go up. Use will go down. That's what happens when price goes down. Up, use goes down. But there'll be no rationing or lockdowns or things like that. No. It's not that bad. And also, that should never be the response. The response should always be let the market adjust, let prices adjust, and let people make decisions based on the new prices. And as prices go up, demand goes down. That's the way it works. And so people self-ration, if you will, although rationing is not the right word. Rationing is a use of force. In addition, you're seeing the United States pump out more, as much as they can natural gas, as much as they can oil, try to get those LNG out. You'll see other places doing it. Israel and Egypt have a lot of gas. Egypt has an LNG facility. They will try pumping up more. As we said, the Saudis are pumping oil west. There's a huge increase in flow of ships into the Red Sea to collect Saudi oil on the west coast, away from the Persian Gulf. It won't fill all the gaps, but it'll fill much of them. Markets will adjust. Prices will go up, but nowhere near as high as I think some people are afraid of. Yeah. All right. Crude oil is at 80. I mean, West Texas, this is 89, so it's down basically $10, 10% from the weekend. Richard, I became a YouTube member to listen to your talk about altruist appeasement yesterday and enjoyed it a lot. Here's another $20 to support shows where you decompress Rand's essays. Thank you, Richard. Really appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, I think people seem to enjoy those talks, so I'll keep them coming. All right, let's see. We are $58 short of our $500 goal, which we have 5 minutes to reach. $58 short of the $500 goals. We should definitely make the 500 today. I'm going to go into the third hour because we've got a bunch of questions still, and that would make it 750 is the goal. So, but let's at least make it 500. So $58. $58. Somebody should do 50, and somebody should do 8. Or, two $20 questions would be good. We got 5. All right. Remo, which accounts do you follow on X to get informed about the war? I am not that big on Osnet Defender. Lately, he has a bias against Israel during this war. I still follow Austin Defender, but there's I don't know. I mean, there's just a bunch of them, and I don't have any one that I kind of trust. A lot of the stuff I get on the war, particularly from the Israeli side, I get from some Telegram channels I follow from Israeli sources. So these are on Telegram in Hebrew, Israeli sources. So that's where I get a lot of my stuff. I also follow some Iranians on X, but I don't have a list of names that I can give you that I trust, so I follow a lot of different people. And yes, I found Austin Defender just less informative on this crisis, on this issue, surprisingly. He was very good in the past. Friend Harper, thank you for the sticker. That chips away at it. We're now only $43 away. $43 away. All right, less than 50. That's good. Still two $20 questions would do it. For an idea to be considered a principle, does there have to be reason to back up that principle? Well, yeah. I mean, there has to be reason to back up any idea. So for an idea to be true, it has to be based on reason. And a principle is, I mean, it has to be, an idea that's generalizable enough that, you are going to apply it in every context where it is relevant. And, I mean, it has to be based on rationality, on reason, on logical arguments, and absolutely. But that's true of everything. Everything that you argue is true. And principles have to be true. A principle would be, be honest. But honest as a more general term than just don't lie. But be honest is like be honest with yourself. Be focused on the fact. Be focused on truth. That's a principle. That principle needs to be defended by logic, by reason. Otherwise, it doesn't hold. Michael says, Trump never fights for the good. He only fights to assert his power. Iran is a target where he can morally justify his whims to the public. Yes, he's got some seeming justification for his power and whim and his flexing of muscles, which he enjoys. Michael, are there any objectives meetup groups in Silicon Valley? Should ARI have more of a presence there? I think there used to be. I don't know. I mean, meetup groups are not affiliated with ARI. There are individuals, but there is actually, that's not true. I know the people involved. There definitely was, as of last year, a meetup group in Silicon Valley. So, if you're interested, check it out. You can probably just search online for meetup group. Thought Criminal, thank you for the sticker. We really appreciate that. And Richard has come in here. Here's another $20 for the goal and shows on understanding Rand's essays. Let's go. Thank you, Richard. Really appreciate that. So we are now only $9 short of our goal. We should be able to do that. $9 $1 stickers would do it. Certainly enough people to do that. Remo, value for value. Thanks, Remo. Appreciate it. Michael, do hate-filled cultures tend to be poor, like Islamic cultures in the American South? Well, I don't know that American South is a hate-filled culture. I wouldn't call it that. Certainly wouldn't put it in the same sentence as Islamic cultures. But yeah, hate is a destroyer, not a builder. So hate-filled cultures, cultures that are focused on hatred, are not productive, successful, wealthy cultures. No question about that. Newly Dan, is capitalism the only system that does not work by hierarchy? Well, I don't know what you mean by hierarchy. I mean, there's a sense in which capitalism works by hierarchy. If you work in a business, there are bosses, there's a CEO, there's middle management, there's upper management. I mean, there's a bunch of people who, there's a hierarchy in the business. So it's not a hierarchy established by law. Capitalism is fundamentally a system of the rule of law, not of rule of men, a rule that protects individuals. And in that sense, it doesn't work by hierarchy. But that doesn't mean there's no hierarchy in society. So I wouldn't use that. There's no privileges, legal privileges. There's no legal hierarchy. Doug, will the Allies need to put boots into the mountain rail system? Well, probably not. I think, maybe, but it's going to be very difficult. Mountainous terrain, it's hard to get to. It's relatively well defended because of the kind of terrain it is. Although they could probably take out the troops there from the air. But one assumes that either there's a deal or Iran surrenders or there's regime change, and all of those make the mountain system irrelevant. And I think that's what happens, rather than special forces, boots in the ground, which could be very costly in human life. Harrison, extremely disappointed that none of our alleged allies would lend minesweepers to help reopen the strait. It's not clear that that's true. We don't know what the allies are willing or not willing to do. There's a possibility they are providing minesweepers. Seems like America has one ally, Israel, and a bunch of European freeloaders. I don't know. I mean, France has ships in the Mediterranean now on the way. The UK has said they'll help. Germany has said they'll help. Other countries have said they'll help. Don't forget Japan also said they would help. They have minesweepers. So it's not clear. We'll see. In the next few days, we'll know more about what the Europeans are willing to do, if anything. To what extent, this is from Oily, to what extent do you think central bank intervention like QE and suppressed interest rates distorts GDP as a meaningful measure of real economic growth. Well, I mean, of course, everything is distorted by, I don't know, the QE distorts, I'd have to think about a GDP. I mean, it distorts it at some point. Interest rates distort it at some point. But not over the long run. Over the long run, and GDP is distorted even more by government spending. Like in World War II, I think it's 1942, GDP grew by 12%. Now, the US economy didn't improve by 12%, but GDP did. Standard of living, quality of life declined. So GDP is measuring something. Whatever it's measuring is highly correlated over the long run with improved quality of life and standard of living. And that's what matters. So over the long run, GDP is highly correlated with wealth creation and improved standard of living. Roman, Elon offered Trump to pay TSA wages. I saw that. Should citizens be allowed to individually fund some executive function temporarily? God. I mean, it's basically Elon saying, I'll pay more taxes. But the problem with that is that there's no mechanism to do it. So they shouldn't be allowed to pay for the services directly. But if Elon gives the money to the government, because there's no budget, the government is not authorized to make those payments to TSA agents. So there's literally no way for the government to actually do what Elon wants done. This is typical of Elon. It goes back to Doge. He doesn't quite understand how the government works. It's not a business. It's the government. And therefore, you can't get around the fact that budgets have to be negotiated and payments can only be made once they're approved by Congress. Elon doesn't get that, and I don't think Trump really gets it. Dan says, you're on great updates. Thank you, Netanyahu, advocating for Orban. Thank you. Netanyahu advocating for Orban. Are you surprised by this? Is it to help Trump? Orban has been pro-Israel, I suppose. Yeah, I think that's the reason. Orban's been pro-Israel. It's sad that Netanyahu is pro-Orban and advocating for him. It's very sad. I'm not a fan of Netanyahu's. This is one of the reasons. I think he makes these really bad judgments. Maybe it's to appease Trump. I don't know. But yeah, Netanyahu should not be doing this. It's bad for Israel. It's bad for long term. Orban is not a good guy. He's a bad, bad guy. And Netanyahu's been too easy on Putin as well. I would have liked to have seen Israel be much more supportive of Ukraine. Significantly more. All right. Nature Observer. Sending ICE to protect airports is like sending Dementors to protect Hogwarts. Well, maybe. It's just a recipe for mayhem and incompetence. Newly Dan, I love the history and upbringing of Israel. What is your favorite Mossad early Israel military story? Oh, I don't know. I mean, there's so many good Mossad stories. I mean, a lot of them from my youth. I like the way they hunted down systematically over many, many years the planners and terrorists involved in the Munich Olympics attacks and killed them systematically, all of them. And never let down and just found them and killed them. Even if it involved special ops in Lebanon or wherever they were, they found them and they killed them. And I like that. That's justice. All right, let's see. JJ Jigbees. Christopher Hitchens celebrated the death of Jerry Falwell, saying on the week of his death, "It's too bad there's not a hell for him to go to." Was that tasteless too? Where does one draw the line? I mean, look, am I happy when really evil, bad people die? Yes. I am. No problem with it. Was Jerry Falwell a bad guy? Yes, he was. Was Jerry Falwell a war hero and an FBI head and somebody who did, by all accounts, a good job? No. So I think you have to, I mean, if somebody's universally accepted as a, and maybe with Hitchens, it's because he's talking to his, the atheist group. I get it. You can say stuff like that when somebody is, you can clearly defend why the person is a bad guy. In Trump's case, it's just emotion. It's just because he didn't like him. It's just because he went after him. And there's no objectivity to it. I think with Christopher Hitchens, there's a lot more objectivity to that. And he didn't say, I'm glad he's dead, which is different. He's dead. It's too bad there's no hell for him to go to, which is kind of a play on Jerry Falwell's beliefs. Doug says, thanks for following up on Afroman. Yeah, it was an entertaining story. Lincoln, censorship and media is so wrong, yet so common. Occurred with film in the 70s. In the 70s, censorship broke. The censorship in film was implemented in the 30s and ran through the 1960s, and by the 1970s, it was gone. Music in the 80s and video games in the 90s. Only world I know of as a Gen Zer, but was all imposed when my dad was growing up. No, I mean, look, we have to put this in perspective. There is more free speech, particularly in the media today, than ever in all of American history. I mean, Lenny Bruce was put into jail for saying the F word on stage in the 1960s. There were only 3 television channels that were heavily regulated by the government in the 60s and 70s. And since then, you've got a plethora of media and cable and all kinds of other stuff. So no, I think things are much, much better today than they were in the past. And the censorship in movies, for example, was basically put in place in the 30s and done away with in the 70s and the 60s and 70s. Yes, you get ratings. But, if you watch a movie from the 50s, married couples, their bedroom, they have 2 separate beds. Because God forbid you associate marriage with 2 people sleeping in the same bed and maybe having sex. The rating system is not censorship. You can choose to not have your movie rated. But what existed before that was much closer to censorship. And that system has gone away. All right, JJ Jacobides. Growing up in the 90s and 2000s, I remember the parental advisory stickers on CDs only made them more alluring. Adults never seem to learn. Yeah, I agree. Making something illegal, making something adults only, always makes it more alluring, particularly to teenagers. Adjukaret. Why would the fall of Iran be that significant? Wouldn't the Middle East return to its pre-1979 status quo? No. Well, I mean, if it did, that would be huge. And before 1979, there was no Islamist movement. Before 1979, the Muslim Brotherhood was basically dormant. Before 1979, this is before Al-Qaeda, before ISIS, before the Islamic Jihad, before Hezbollah, before Hamas. Yeah, 1979 is a pivotal year for the Middle East. The Middle East was much, much better pre-79 than it is today. Now, today, the pivot would be greater because pre-79, there were no Arab countries that had peace with Israel. Just before the Egyptian peace with Israel, now Jordan. If Iran falls, you can expect peace with Lebanon, Saudi Arabia potentially, maybe even Kuwait, who knows? So, and then on top of that, before 1979, there were Muslims living in the West, but nobody had any problem with that because they weren't radicals and they weren't insisting on Sharia law. They weren't Islamists. Iran falling would take the wind out of the sails of the Islamist movement in the UK, where you live, in the rest of Europe. It would deflate them completely, particularly if the regime change happened from within. Muslims rejecting Islamism, that would be huge for the Islamic world. So it would be as big, if not bigger, than the fall of the Berlin Wall. It would completely change the Middle East. Also, remember, the Middle East is moderately, slowly, partially westernizing. This would accelerate that, which would have ramifications for the rest of the world. They have a lot of money, a lot of influence, and a lot of immigrants in Europe look to the Middle East for spiritual guidance, political guidance. Harrison, Trump just restored the statue of Christopher Columbus that was torn down by the mob in 2020. Good. I mean, Christopher Columbus is worthy of statue. Lee, General Lee, is not. He fought for the preservation of slavery. His statues should be in museums, but not in the street. Stephen Harper, remember when Peikoff went on Bill O'Reilly after 9/11 and said we should attack Iran? Well, with nukes. O'Reilly and Wright broadly was so dismissive of it. Sure, he's gung-ho now that Trump is behind it. Tribalism, yes. I was there in the studio with Leonard when I think I drove up with him to LA when he was on at the studio when he did the Bill O'Reilly show. So yes, I remember that. And yeah, Leonard Peikoff was absolutely right. That was in 2002, I think, just about a couple of months after 9/11. And Leonard was right then, and Bill O'Reilly was wrong then. And if they'd done it then, we wouldn't have to do it now, and the whole world would be a different place. All right. Thank you to all the super chatters. Thank you for all being here. I will be back tonight with Don Watkins. There's another show tonight. Don't miss it. With Don Watkins. We are going to be talking about the inability of the West to defend itself. So the topic is why the West is losing confidence and how to fix it. And this is all related to a book that Don and I are working on, Christianity versus the West, so Western civilization. So we're going to be talking about Western civilization. What is it? Why should it have confidence? Why is it losing that confidence? How do we regain that confidence? So it'll be a fun show. 8 p.m. Eastern Time. 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I know that's late for you Europeans, but the rest of you, don't miss it. Don is great. I'll see you tonight. All right, everybody. Bye. See you soon. 8 o'clock, 2.5 hours.